morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know about you, but that video just filled me with hope. I love nothing more than seeing kids really get into technology and get excited about how it can change the world. Let me give you a bit of background to me and just why I'm here talking to you today. I grew up in the 80s. This was the decade that gave birth to IBM's first PC, but more importantly to me at the time, we saw an explosion of science fiction. And when I was growing up, we had films like Back to the Future, kids with these crazy augmented reality headsets that just looked like nothing we'd seen before, and they used them to take phone calls and to control all the appliances in their house. We had Total Recall with driverless cars. I think there was actually a plastic dummy in the front of the car. And then a few years later, we saw films like Minority Report, show us the power of gesture controls. And I must admit, when I was growing up, these things absolutely fascinated me. And crazy though it might sound, they really did inspire me to get into and learn a lot more about technology. And 25 years later, I still absolutely love this industry, and I love being part of a world that is changing very, very rapidly. Despite the fact that most of the heroes or the scientists in these films were all men, I do remember thinking that there was no way I was going to miss out on the opportunity to play a role in an industry that was really going to change the world we were growing up in. Now, bringing us back to today, artificial intelligence is really going to power the next wave of economic progress. And by 2020, a firm called Constellation Research has estimated that the industry will be worth $40 billion. So if you're wondering about where to point your career and where the opportunity will lie, this is definitely something you should put in your sights. So one of the characteristics of AI and what really sets it apart from other technology is its ability to learn and teach itself. And when the best AI systems are set the task of learning, they can achieve some really extraordinary things. Now, a few years ago, Google's division DeepMind produced AlphaGo. And it was an AI that was developed to learn the Asian strategy game of Go. And they taught the computer by showing it lots of human versus human games. And eventually it went on to play the world champion, Lee Sedol, and beat him. Now, Google didn't stop there. They actually created the next version, which was AlphaZero, a more powerful version. And the way that they taught it was actually not by observing games, but it played games against itself. Then they went on to ask it to try and learn to play chess. And it took it just 4 hours to surpass the best human being in the world at playing chess. And one of the interesting things about this is that AlphaZero was never designed to play chess. And the scientists think that one of the reasons it was able to win so quickly was actually it came from a completely different perspective. And a great example, I think, about why different, diverse thinking to an old problem can give you a different result. Very relevant, I think, for anybody here today. So AlphaZero and the deep learning technology, it's all about machine learning. I've forgotten to change my slides. Okay. And the reason that it's so powerful is quite simple. Now, while humans are quite fantastically skilled at some things, it can be quite difficult to understand or program how we do it. Think about the way that you might recognize a person's face, a friend, somebody you know. Trying to actually program that into a computer is almost impossible, for us to understand the physiological steps that takes. So machine learning works in a very different way, where we design code that can actually start teaching itself. And it doesn't do that through rules and code. A little chap on the video earlier who said, I programmed a program. We actually use huge amounts of data, and machine learning spots patterns in this data and learns and teaches itself. Far more vast amounts of data than any human being could possibly assimilate. Now, there are lots of different types of machine learning. Some of them are here. We've got predictive systems that can help us predict the weather or different events, economic forecasts, for example. We've got natural language programming that can actually, in just about real time now, understand voice and text. And we've got things like machine vision that can understand pictures. Now, I don't know, can I have a show of hands? Who here has been asked to prove they're not a robot by clicking on some squares, looking for cars and things? And it's ironic because it's actually we all know it's a robot asking us to do that, which is pretty crazy. Are you okay? Oh, thank you. Okay, so maybe one more question. How hard do you think it is for robots to tell the difference between animals and food? Well, sometimes it's not quite as easy as we might think. I don't know about you, but I had to take a second look at a number of these pictures before I could tell the difference. My daughter gave me this one. Well, as it happens, it's not difficult for an AI. They practically get this right 100% of the time. So which is better, a computer or a human brain? Now, if I ask most people, would you like your brain to work more like a computer? Lots of them have said, oh yeah, absolutely. So it's quite bizarre that during the last 2 decades, many scientists have actually been trying to build computers that operate more like human brains. Now, the basic idea of some of this advances is around neural networks. And whilst a number of you might know, that for those of you that don't, it's all about putting together different nodes that process data, learn, and then connect with thousands and millions of other nodes to actually make progress and be able to spot patterns that we just couldn't possibly do. So AI is already making some remarkable advances in many of our industries. Any of you that use Spotify or Amazon will probably know that a lot of the recommendations, as to the music that you might like or what you might like to buy, books you might like to read, is all done by some kind of machine learning or AI sitting at the back. Now, a lot of companies, as they ramp up their use of AI, are thinking about lots of different uses. This framework is actually about the use of AI in financial services, so my industry. And a number of different things become quite relevant. AI is being used to make us more efficient, more effective. It's being used to inform our experts, but also innovation. And we know that there are many organizations running pilots or proof of concepts right now that impact people, products, and processes. We do think that this will see an explosion in new jobs, but we've probably got about 3 years before we really see most companies actually deploying this at scale. So you've probably still got time to gen up before all the explosion of jobs on the market. Now, we do know that if we approach AI in the right way, it will drive huge amounts of economic value. But in such a fast-moving world, it can be really difficult to know where to start. So by breaking it down into steps, we can get a much clearer idea of how to evolve the use of AI. Now, firms are using it in quite basic ways right now to automate manual processes and to make them more efficient. Google announced just last year that it had managed to map every single location in France in just 2 hours by feeding in the street view images that you see on Google into an AI. Now, years ago, that would have taken dozens of people, probably years to do. AI, excuse me, AI can also help augment the way that we work and support our workforce. And I think one of the really interesting uses that we're seeing is coming out of the health industry. So I think one of the best examples is probably in the way that a lot of the doctors diagnose cancer. So when a doctor suspects cancer, they'll take a sample and they'll send it off to a pathologist. And on an average day, a pathologist can look at hundreds of different samples made up of millions and millions of cells. And a few months ago, a group of scientists perfected an AI tool that they used to help them. Now, when we ask the AI to analyze the samples, is this cancer or is this not cancer, they get it right about 92.5% of the time. But when you compare that to the person, the pathologist, they're still actually better. They get it right over 96% of the time. But the real learning here was that when the scientists combined the human skills with the AI, the accuracy went up to 99.5%. And there are many, many examples like this where actually the combination of human and machine presents us a huge opportunity for advancements. One of the other areas where we believe AI can really help us is in customer service and playing a role in supporting customer care. Now, we're already seeing digital assistants and chatbots, and if, like me, you've used them, some are pretty good, some are still maybe not quite so good, but we're even getting personalized product and service recommendations on many, many of our kind of e-commerce sites. But I would say this, I think that right now, most of our AI applications still have a long way to go before they can get the level of accuracy, and particularly before they can understand the tone and play to the emotional piece. I think it's going to be a few years yet where a human intervention is still going to give us a lot better quality when it comes to customer service or the care industry. Now, for all the progress that is being made, there's still a number of companies, in fact most I would say, that have yet to embrace AI. And when we look at why that is, there's a number of key drivers. So it comes down to getting the right talent, prioritizing the investments, and there's still a lot of concerns about security, particularly given the huge amounts of data that you need to feed some of these AI machine learning programs to actually make them effective. For others, it's about defining compelling business cases, getting strong leadership support for these type of programs, and hiring more technology staff. That's a key message for anybody here today. Citi is very lucky to have a very talented technology team here in Warsaw already, but we will need more technology skills, and particularly in fields like AI. So please do take some time, if you haven't already, to talk to the Citi team here today. So in conclusion, what can we really expect to see over the next few years from AI? Now, I met a chap called Toby Walsh recently, and he is Professor of AI at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, and he had a few predictions for us. So one of the things that he said we would see in the next few years was a revival of old movie stars. So we're likely to see in the future movies with Marilyn Monroe appearing alongside modern-day movie stars, and we won't know that it's AI or not real. The other prediction that he made was that a team of robots would beat Germany at soccer. I don't know if anybody else thinks that's a crazy idea, but we'll wait and see. But maybe the most fascinating one is that AI will provide us daily advice. We'll have a doctor in our pocket giving us advice on our health. There was a Japanese scientist that came out with an invention that's not quite ready yet. I'm not sure I would use it today. But we're going to have toilets that talk to us and analyze things that might appear in the toilet, and give us indications as to whether there are some early warning signs about, things that we need to take action on our health. Right now, scans, ultrasounds, some of the technology that's used to spot many of our health issues early are still quite primitive, whereas these tests are already indicating that this might be able to spot something years in advance of current technology. So where to from here? How do we prepare for a world where humans and machines are living and working side by side? Is this something that we should be worried about in terms of how it impacts our future, our kids, our jobs? Well, there are lots of different views. I'm definitely in the camp that says, this is just another part of our progress, and it will create value. Most of the jobs today didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago, and I truly believe that as AI takes over some of the routine or vast data processing type work, we will see this mean more meaningful and different types of roles for humans to play. So I, for one, think that maybe just like the Industrial Revolution over 200 years ago, this will be good, but we'll probably go through, this period of uncertainty. But I, for one, am thrilled to be in technology in an industry where I can at least play a role in the future. But I hope that many of you out there will join me in doing that. Thank you very much.